when you least expect it.
Whether it's fires, storms, or floods, these 5 things can help keep you and your family alive. Despite people constantly making fun of the prepping community,
Charge, does it hurt at all?
I can't hear you. God damn it, Steve. I don't want to stand. Things are spinning.
there's no harm in being a little prepared. And a lot of things that you can do to be prepared are fairly simple. Today I'm going to give you 5 things that'll help you be prepared for your next fire, storm, flooding, whatever might knock your power out, whatever might knock the water out. Number 1, water and purification. You should have at least a couple cases of water stored, or a couple of those big jugs of water stored. I would not use the milk jug type things; those tend to rupture easy. But if you like to drink Arizona sweet tea, you can fill those with water. And you need to have some sort of water purification. Here's our household's main source of water purification. This is a big Berkey. Right now I've got 4 of the big black filters in it, and I've got 4 PF2 fluoride filters in it. It holds, I think, 2.5 gallons, maybe a little bit more. But you don't have to go with something this big, though I would recommend it because that Berkey will filter out everything that you could possibly run into on the nuclear, biological, and chemical spectrum. The PF2 fluoride filters, when you dump your tap water in it, it gets rid of all the fluoride. Fluoride is pretty bad for you. Or at least it gets rid of 95% of all the fluoride. Because fluoride is fairly bad for you. It's a neurotoxin. And if you don't believe me, just kind of casually look up when fluoride started being put in water, and then casually kind of look up when Alzheimer's rates started to skyrocket, and just do the math and figure things out for yourself. But there's other forms of water purification besides Berkey as well. And if you're worried about just for emergency preparedness, you could get something like this Sport Berkey. It's just a simple water filter bottle, and they sell spare filters for it. The filters last quite a long time, I think maybe 300 gallons or so. And you can get that stuff from usaberkeyfilters.com. I actually got this free for my purchase because I ordered a bunch of PF2 fluoride filters and extra Berkey parts, a new sight glass spigot for my big Berkey. And because I'm a member of the MSB through the Survival Podcast, I was able to use his codes, which I recommend being an MSB member. I'm going to shamelessly plug Jack Spirko there for a minute. But this thing's $46. The membership's $50. It pretty much paid itself off in the first purchase. And that's like the 3rd or 4th one of those I've gotten from usaberkeyfilters.com for free. And you also get 10% off. So that's really handy. And that'll filter out everything except it doesn't have the fluoride filtration. And also, I keep a water purification system in my go bag, the hand pump type, and it works pretty decent as well. And I do carry the Sport Berkey water bottle in conjunction with that in my go bag. And stuff in your go bag can be used at your home and vice versa. Guys, you're going to make it 3 days without water. That's the rule before you die. But in reality, it's about 1.5. And that's because after a full 24 hours without water, you're going to be cramping so bad you're going to be completely useless, and it's going to be almost impossible for you to achieve getting water after that. So that's something you need to keep in mind. And if you have a Berkey system like mine, or those little bottles, or even that hand pump thing, you can actually straight up just pump flood water, and it'll purify flood water, which is pretty known to be highly contaminated with chemicals and other contaminants. As you can see in North Carolina, the mud that was left over from the flooding in North Carolina was so corrosive, it was eating through people's rubber boots. It'll filter at least most of that stuff out to make it drinkable. Something to keep in mind, you will die without water. Number 2 on my list, you need to have a generator with fuel. Doesn't matter what kind of fuel, whatever kind of fuel your generator will run on. I have a whole system that I'll explain in a minute. So my generator is a 4,000 watt Cabela's dual fuel generator to run off both propane and gasoline. The downside to that generator is it's only 120 volts. I did not get the split phase version because they didn't have it at the time. Get the split phase version so you can run 240 volt stuff. It'll make your life exponentially easier. It'll also make it easier for you to put a sub panel in and an ATS, and you can actually automate the whole process of your generator coming online legally within code. That way it kills the power to the transfer switch. Will switch off the normal power, your grid power. That way you can't backfeed the grid. The last thing you want to do is backfeed the grid and get a lineman killed who's trying to restore your power. And the way that works is if I plug 120 volts into my outlet right now and I don't shut my main breaker off, the 120 volts is going to go back to the distribution transformer on the line, and it's going to transform itself back up to, say, 5,000 volts. And then dude working on said transformer, disconnecting link, or whatever caused my power to go out, gets electrocuted and dies. And guess what? I go to jail. So make sure you're doing stuff legally. They do sell cheap kits to make sure that you can lock out your main breaker and then bring on your generator breaker to backfeed if you don't want to go the ATS route and stuff. As far as fuel goes, you need to have at least 12 5-gallon cans of fuel. I don't have that yet. I've been building up to it because I've been getting the more expensive metal cans, and I've been replacing my plastic cans with the metal ones. I think right now I got 6 or 7 5-gallon cans, maybe 8 total, and then I've also got a 2-gallon can. Ideally, what I would do is have 14 cans total because I carry typically 2 5-gallon cans in my car. Right now I'm only carrying 1 because I'm not going very far. But that leaves a lot of gas for this 4,000 watt generator, and and even though it's only 120 volts, it will run a lot of stuff, including a couple electric heaters. It'll keep the fridge and freezer going to keep the meat from falling out, and it'll provide some lighting. Don't get too excited about what you can and can't run on a generator. You need to run the bare minimum. You need to have a heat source. You need to have a little bit of lighting, maybe some entertainment. Put like your bedroom circuit. Ideally, what I would do, and what I do is I'm going to put my bedroom circuit and everything involved in the bedroom on one phase in a backup panel with an ATS. Right now, my plan is I got a manual disconnecting for the main breaker. Plan on upgrading that later. But that'll isolate us to one bedroom where we're only heating one bedroom. Everybody can stay in there with the TV, have entertainment. We can all sleep in there and stay warm. And then I can cycle the generator to run, maybe 4 hours on, 4 hours off, just enough to keep the room warm and keep the fridge and freezers cold so that I don't lose all my meat. And if you have 12 of these cans, 14 in my case, because I'd like to keep 2 with me, maybe even 15 to have a 5-gallon can of avgas for the chainsaws, you can cycle those every month. Just label them January, February, March, and cycle them every month. And when it's January, you dump that one in your car and you go fill it up at the gas station when you fill your car up. February, same thing. March, same thing. It takes you maybe 5 extra minutes to do it before you go fill your car up, and you've always got fresh gas that's never more than a year old. Conversely, my generator also runs off propane, which will store almost indefinitely. And then there's some generators that run off tri-fuel. And the tri-fuel is typically natural gas. And natural gas is more stable than electricity because it's self-sustaining. So how your natural gas pipeline maintains pressure is you have compressors hooked to an engine that runs on natural gas. And the natural gas feeds the engine to compress the natural gas to feed the engine and feed everything else. And that's how it works, self-sustaining system. So natural gas will typically stay on before anything else because it's self-sustaining. You might lose water before you lose natural gas. And that's another topic I want to talk about. Water. Again, we're going to backtrack to water, and I'm going to tell you a story. When I lived in Valonia, Indiana, we constantly had water advisories, boil water advisories for this, advisories for that. Well, I ended up getting tired of it because I would store a big bunch of water up in jugs for those advisories because the water was always going to shit, and we would just go through that. But we would always, there was a time where 24 hours before we got a boil water advisory, we had grass and roots coming through our faucets, in the bathroom, and it hit my cousin's house first because he lived up the road from me. His daughter was taking a bath and roots and shit started coming out of the faucet. So they called us and we're like, oh shit, okay, well, that sucks. We need to not be drinking this water. And then shortly after, the water turned brown at our place and shit started coming out of the faucets. It took a full 24 hours after that happened for them to issue a boil water advisory. So that water has been contaminated quite a bit before they ever got to that point and figured out something might be wrong. So that's where the Berkey came in. I purchased a Sport Berkey, which is basically the same one I got now, except it's plastic instead of stainless steel. And Steve has that one now. I gave it to Steve. But if I filter everything I have through a Berkey, then I never have to worry about a boil water advisory. I've even got a separate ice machine that produces that good nugget ice like you would get at Sonic. And it was fairly cheap. I think less than $100. And so now I've got, not only do I have filtered water, but I've got filtered ice to put in the water. So everything I've got is contaminant free, fluoride free, and it's great for you. Keep that in mind. Back to my list. Part 3, non-perishable food and a means to cook it if it requires cooking. This goes back to fuel as well. So for non-perishable food, I have roughly 50 pounds of all-purpose flour, 50 pounds of bread flour, 130 pounds of rice, 50 pounds of beans, and of pinto beans, and another various assortment of dried goods stored in 5-gallon buckets that I could tap in at any given point in time that I use to pull the oxygen out of those buckets with hand warmers. There'll be links in the description for all these items that I use. And those buckets, as they are, will typically store for about 30 years. So I've always got those staple foods on hand. You can't just live off that stuff, though, by itself. You're going to get really irritated really quick trying to live off of beans and rice and flour. So you need to go to Costco, Sam's Club, BJ's, wherever, get some canned chicken, get some canned tuna. You can even get canned beef. You can even can your own foods like beef stew and stuff. There's a lot of good recipes where you just put the raw meat and ingredients in ball mason jars, and then you can them, you pressure can them, and they cook in the jars. Those are good forms of non-perishable food, and once they're in that state, in those jars, you could actually eat them cold. You don't have to reheat them if you don't want. But you typically want to keep foods that don't require much more than water to cook, which is also why you need purified water. And rice, beans, and all that stuff, pancake mix, all that requires just water to cook. Oats are another good one, but the downside to oats is they're one of the most heavily chemical-laden foods you can eat. They have so much pesticides on them. But they do eat really well. They are fairly okay for you, minus all the chemicals that are in them. And, they store indefinitely, too. I store mine in the original bags, and I've got them in totes. I do plan on putting them in 5-gallon buckets eventually as well and cracking those bags open, but as it stands, the bags are hermetically sealed and should be fine. And for cooking, I have my Whisperlight International stove by MSR. I have another Ozark Trail stove that runs off of either propane or butane. I have a Coleman gasoline stove, the kind you pump up, that I got from the thrift shop. I've got gasoline lanterns that I got from the thrift shop because it's more efficient to cook directly with gasoline and to light directly with gasoline than it is to run a generator, a field winding generator that's going to be 35% thermally efficient in combustion, and then the generator is going to be about 40% efficient in converting that mechanical energy into electricity because it's using field windings instead of permanent magnets. And then if you run a hot plate or something off that, it's wildly inefficient. You're burning way more fuel than if you just used a Coleman gasoline stove. The ones I have that I picked up from the thrift shop are not dual fuel, but they will run off a standard gasoline just the same. You just have to clean the gas generators out about once a year. Same thing with the lanterns, and I do need to go through and fix some of these lanterns. But all these lanterns were less than $25. The stove was $15, and I have about $10 worth of parts in them and fixing the pumps and stuff from Amazon, and I will link all the stuff to fix those in the show description as well. And then naturally we have a propane gas grill with a burner on it, and then I have my Masterbuilt smoker that requires a little bit of electricity but can run off of charcoal or wood. Number 4, comms. Comms are important. Communication. You need to be able to communicate with people. You need to be able to know what's going on in your area. You need to be able to communicate with people around you to determine a course of action for what to do in your area. And you need to be able to determine with comms whether or not you need to leave your area. So in order to do that, you need to have like a NOAA weather radio. If you have a cell phone, and cell phones aren't guaranteed because you can always lose cell phone signal and internet and all that. But WeatherBug's a good app. Check the WeatherBug. It gives me flash flood warnings all the time. And believe it or not, our backyard did flood, as you can see right now. And WeatherBug was telling me the flash flood was going on. I was like, okay, whatever. Well, we started hearing it rain pretty hard. My girlfriend was like, oh my gosh, should we be worried? And I was like, no, we shouldn't be worried. No, don't worry about it. We're good. I'll go check outside and even prove it to you. And I opened the door, and the water, as you can see, was about 6 inches from coming over to our patio. And I was like, okay, yep, we got to worry. Time to worry, and worry we did. But what do we do in that situation? Well, WeatherBug warned me, but I didn't really listen to it, and I should have. NOAA weather radio will warn you. So have a radio that can communicate with NOAA weather. And also, I have a ham radio in case my cell signal goes down, and I can communicate on the FRS frequencies with it, which is like if you got a standard Motorola walkie-talkie and it's got channel 4, like 1, 2, 3, 4, those are your FRS frequencies, and like channel 4 is really 462.6375 megahertz. And if you tune into that with a ham radio, you're on channel 4, stuff like that. And I can communicate with that radio to Steve's house from my house. And I can, radio Steve to help me out, come get me, see if he needs help, vice versa. Stuff like that. Get conditions. And, during emergencies, a lot of ham radio guys are usually very helpful. But if you hop on the ham bands and it's not an emergency, not all, but some of those guys are the biggest fuds you'll ever meet.
I don't even appreciate you being on the ham bands. How you like that?
Okay, well, I appreciate that.
Don't worry about it.
Well, if you got a problem, why don't you move instead of yelling at me?
No, I've been on 3830 since 1978. You ain't been here that long. You just been splattering for a long time.
Interfered with by it, but there's nothing really I can do here besides you yell at me.
Well, let me tell you this. Right here on frequency with you, it's hard to understand what you're saying. You got such crappy audio.
And they will turn you into the FCC, and the FCC will try to DF you, and then you'll get in all kinds of trouble, and yada, yada, yada. DF is direction fine. When you transmit a signal, that signal gets broadcast everywhere. That signal can also be pinpointed by triangulating where you are based on where that signal was pinged at and picked up at. Something you got to be mindful of. And if you're trying to, illegally transmit on ham radio frequencies, I'm not going to advise you to do that, but I would advise you to move at least 3 miles away from your current position where you plan on staying, make your transmission, and then move from that area. That would be my advice to you. Not that I should tell you to break the law or anything, but, act accordingly. Comms are really important. I carry a Baofeng BFF8HP 8-watt radio with me. At all times, it's with me right now. There's always ham repeaters, so you can get interstate transmissions and even cross-country transmissions. There's some people with HF radios that can transmit halfway across the world if the atmospherics are right. Really cool stuff. Number 5, you need to have a go bag. Everybody in your family should have a go bag. And that's basically where, something's happening and we need to leave. I can pick up this backpack. It has everything I would need to sustain myself for at least a few days. And we can throw it in the cars and we can go somewhere. Or we can throw it on our backs and we can go somewhere and get out of danger. I.e., you live in a valley that's known for flooding, weatherbug, and NOAA's telling you it's going to flood. It's raining really hard and you start seeing the water start rising a little bit. You might want to grab the go bag and get the fuck out of there. Don't wait around and be one of those people sitting on their roof waiting for FEMA to help you, because FEMA's not going to fucking help you. We saw that they didn't help anybody in North Carolina. And in fact, and this is a verifiable fact, all the donated goods that were going to North Carolina, if they weren't physically locked up inside of a church, FEMA was seizing them and not redistributing them to people.
Now, I wanted to focus in on Brunswick as well because this is the same county that has received FEMA funding from that same program that spent almost $1 billion through the fiscal year of 2023 and 2024 on sheltering illegal immigrants throughout the United States of America. By the way, FEMA coming out and saying that they have run out of that funding.
We are expecting another hurricane hitting. We do not have the funds. FEMA does not have the funds to make it through the season.
My name is Casey Webb. I'm from Swannanoa, North Carolina. I lost everything I have. I just did an inspection with FEMA last night. They told me that I was denied and post-dated my letter for the 5th of October when my inspection was done on the 4th. They have not seen receipts. They have not seen pictures or anything of the things that were in my home and denied me.
So I'm here in Boone, North Carolina. I'm at the staging area. I volunteered myself and my canines to come up and do some search and rescue efforts. Here's the situation, okay? FEMA is in the area, and we've been told that if we see any FEMA agents, like, hightail it and go. So, obviously, you see all my equipment. So we've been told to just turn around and go the opposite direction, because what they're doing is they're confiscating everything. Like, they would confiscate all of my gear, my car, my dogs, like, literally everything. There are some people who have been tracking these FEMA agents and what they do with these supplies after, and these are people that are directly associated with the group that I'm volunteering with. And essentially what they're doing is they're taking these supplies to sanctuary areas for illegal migrants and giving it all to them. They are telling the locals here that they have no more money, that they can't give them any money, they can't do anything, but they are confiscating volunteer supplies as they come through, and they are giving it to people who are not legal within the country.
Donate. Please donate what you can. Try to find a nonprofit to donate to, church, local PD. A lot of those are taking donations, sheriff's departments. I know my department is running a bunch of stuff to the western part of the state to help. Donate. But please do not donate to FEMA. They are hindering a lot of what people are trying to accomplish out in the western part of the state.
Do not, please do not give any supplies to FEMA. If you want to donate supplies to the hurricane survivors from Hurricane Helene, do not give the supplies to FEMA. Give them to a church, give them to a nonprofit. FEMA is not doing what they are supposed to be doing, okay? They don't care about people. They are not here to help people at all. They're not helping people. They are taking supplies and giving them to people who don't even need them. They are taking supplies and running off with them. Do not give any supplies to FEMA at all. If you want to donate supplies, donate them to a nonprofit or to a church. Do not give them to FEMA, okay?
Hey, it's Dr. Phil, and I am out working, doing some hurricane relief and recovery, whatever you want to call it. And all these orange shirts you see around and behind me are Samaritan's Purse. And let me tell you, these guys don't have meetings to fill out forms, to plan a meeting, to get something going. They have verbs in their sentences, they have springs in their step, and they're out making things happen. FEMA, all these other people are talking, thinking. No, not Samaritan's Purse. They're out doing things.
And it's a verifiable fact, if you had certain political yard signs, FEMA was passing your house up. You might want to be the gray man in certain situations like that. Just saying. So have a good go bag. I've done several videos on go bags. I've got a new video coming out on some changes I've made to my go bag, and you'll see that soon. Bonus. We talked about my 5 things. Let's talk about the bonus. Bonus. You need to have a plan. You need to have a plan for everything. You need to have a plan if there's going to be a fire. We saw what happened in California. Flooding. What just happened in eastern Kentucky. I'm in Bullitt County. You saw my backyard. North Carolina. Look what happened in North Carolina. Holy shit. You need to have plans for those things. Now, you can't always plan for everything, but having a good, solid plan in place can help you react better to those situations than if you don't have a plan and you just start panicking and doing random shit. Write your plan down. Use AI to help you develop a solid plan and print it out, and then have it in a binder in your gun safe or somewhere that your family can access it. So if you're not home, they have a plan. I.e., here's a good example. In the case of power outage, power goes out. Make a good assessment. Assess how long you think the power is going to be out, i.e., if it's a hurricane or severe flooding, power might be out for a long time, longer than a week, longer than your gasoline is going to make you be able to last, or your propane or your natural gas. Plan for that. Be able to make those assessments early on before it's too late. So, good example. Boom, power goes out. Generator's running, you're running 4 hours on, 4 hours off. Maybe you're checking, maybe you got a little bit of internet and you're checking to see what's going on around you. You're hitting the ham band, seeing what's going on around you. There's not going to be any help for a while. Okay, now I got to figure out what I'm going to do with all my frozen meat, right? That's the point where you're using the gasoline to run the generator about 4 hours on, 4 hours off, keeping your meat frozen. But now you know it's not going to last long enough. Now it's time to start pulling meat out of the freezer, using my propane burner, like my propane fish fryer burner, throwing the All-American pressure canner on there, and start pressure canning your meats to preserve them and keep them good. Because you can pressure can meat without any additional acid or anything, and that meat will store for a good long while without any kind of refrigeration. Or, oh no, this is happening. Okay, I need to start drying my meats. I need to build a fire and start fire drying my meat or run it in the dehydrator along with pressure canning my meat to get this meat to where it will store longer. Also, having curing salts is very helpful for that. I just had a long conversation with my grandpa though, and he says curing salts aren't needed. He just used to use regular salt back when he was a child. I would love to do an interview with these people. They're great folks, and just share the knowledge they got. I probably won't post that interview, but I would just rip the knowledge off and me giving you that knowledge because they might not want to be on camera. But that's a good example of having a plan. A lot of times if the power goes out severely like that, you also lose city water because it runs off of electricity. Something to think about as well. That's where your water purification comes in. That $600 for a Berkey might sound like a lot of money right now, but it's going to be worth its weight in gold when you're dying of dehydration. And you're going to really wish you dropped that $600 or $200 on a Sport Berkey, or even, $50 on one of these Sport Berkey water bottles. Something to think about, guys. You need to stay prepared. I don't care if, what was that, A&E or whoever did Doomsday Preppers tried to make preppers look like fucking idiots. Ignore that shit. There's nothing wrong with having a little bit of extra to get you and your family through some bad times. Your life is worth more than some jackass on the TV making fun of you. Keep that in mind. And with that, maybe I should give you a little piece of dad advice. Not really dad advice, but just advice in general. And here's my advice. And it's going to be completely off subject. If you reside in a state where they passed a law allowing for the death penalty to pedophiles, and you're mad about that because you say it affects your community negatively, your community is fucked up. You might want to find a new community. And if you support somebody fucking children, you deserve a bullet in the head. And with that, I'm out. I love you all, except for the pedophiles. I hope you fucking die. Peace.